Cool.
We're here with Sam, the founder of Studio Big Blue, where we're at, this magical musical haven. And first of all, Sam, thanks so much for having us. This has been, it feels like longer than 24 hours, but it's only been 12 or so, and we're super inspired and excited and happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Well, thanks for being here and coming create with me. It was very, very nice.
Yeah, we're really, I think, on cloud nine with what's been going down. You guys are in for a treat. So, Sam, we're really curious about your musical journey. We'd love to hear about how your love for music started, and what has your journey been like to this point?
All right. Well, when I grew up, my dad was really a music lover, had like thousands of CDs, and there was always music playing.
Nice.
So that's how I think it started for me. Like I would just always...
You took classes when you were young?
I took classical piano, like serious like competition
nice. Wow.
stuff for 10 years, when starting at 6 years old. But I think growing up with like Pink Floyd and Vangelis and those guys playing constantly in my house was like what really awakened my ear for really good production and really good like atmospheres and stuff like that.
And so who were your inspirations? Or like artists that you really...
Like I said, when I was young, yeah, like Vangelis, Pink Floyd, also all the baby boomer stuff, like Deep Purple and like Black Sabbath,
yeah.
all that stuff. But I think like what I use still to this day in production is more like those Pink Floyd, Vangelis, like bands that were really prone to like really good production, really good soundscapes,
And you went from classical music training to being in a band, you mentioned?
Yeah, I went from classical to when I left my home really young, and then I was like in the streets. I started busking like with a guitar, and then I was in Europe for 4 years, like kind of busking my way.
It's amazing.
So I learned the accordion like in the Sahara Desert, like weirdly, like like stuff like that. But music's always been with me when I was like, well, anywhere, any part of my life. It's kind of always been my refuge, I think.
And so when did that band start, and what kind of music were you guys making?
Well, my band started when I came back from Europe, and then I started writing music with Jeannie, who was more like a singer, songwriter. And we got that band to a point. We went to like North by Northeast. We played a few jazz fests in Halifax, in Vancouver. So that was my first, if you want, like my first experience with playing in front of crowds and
what kind of music was that?
Setting. It was like a little bit of folk, a little bit of, it was a little dark, a little bit of electro. It was just like lots of things. It was very interesting.
To hear it. What was the band called?
It was Curse in the Woods.
Okay.
And,
nice.
I wasn't a producer back then, but then we made our first album with like at Studio Victor.
Yeah, we'd love to hear about
Montreal,
that. You mentioned it over there.
So that was like when we went to record that album. That's when I realized that my like studio life was for me, and then I was like, okay, this is it. I'm so happy in a studio. One day I want my own studio,
And so what's the history of that space? Because you mentioned it's
legendary. Well, you want to hear the story of Studio Victor? It's like this legendary studio in Montreal that they built inside the RCA Victor building, like where they built all the turntables and the radios and all that. And then they built that in the 50s. It became like they had all the big artists, like one of Jackson, Hank Snow. I'm not sure if Elvis went, but it was like that level of recording studio. It was the first in Canada that they had engineers like making like wooden arches for like the sound, like acoustics and everything. And then in the 60s, with the Cold War and the race to space, they closed it off and they started doing like sound wave experimentations, and they were like, because RCA was building microchips for the satellites and all that kinds of stuff, so they closed it off, and it was rediscovered in the 80s when, like, all of a sudden behind a concrete wall they were like, oh my god, there's this beautiful studio. And then it became again a very famous studio.
So they discovered the studio behind the wall.
Is, yeah,
it was just
as is.
like a hidden.
And then this
That
guy
was crazy.
Gaetan Pilon took it, and then he brought it to like having like multiple like golden, like platinum records coming out of there.
That's
And
awesome.
and it happened to be on my street. That's what's funny about it.
Did you know it was there before you
No,
visited?
I didn't, but I knew there was the RCA building. It's like famous,
Yeah.
but I didn't know there was a recording studio. So
That's awesome.
I ended up recording there and falling in love with the studio life and the.
So what was your transition from band to producer? How did that unfold?
Well, what happened is that I started a French kind of pop and hip hop. I use a lot of influence, but like I started this project. It's just me, Sam Harvey, and I started my first album. I was writing these songs, and I was already like fiddling around with Pro Tools and on a laptop, like just trying, like at least I could do my pre-prod. So I started doing my pre-prod for that myself, and then I went to record in a big studio in the Eastern Townships, and we recorded the album there. And then while I was there, the assistant of the guy quit.
Wow.
And then while I was recording, and I remember exactly when it was, because that's the week Leonard Cohen died. And we were at the studio, and that day the assistant just quit, and then the guy, like the owner of the studio, was like, ah shit, like what am I gonna do? And I was like, I'll be your assistant. So I became his assistant for over a year.
Wow.
So then I learned from knowing a little bit of production to knowing the professional aspect of it, how to deliver tracks to like a Hollywood studio for a score, like all the little details of the industry.
That's insane. The world kind of
Yeah.
just aligned for you.
Yeah, planets aligned, yeah,
And,
boom. And then so we recorded the album went like to be awarded at La Disque, like, which is the Quebec equivalent of the Junos, for album of the year. I got a lot of radio play. I got a #1 hit with that. So that generated enough revenue to invest. Instead of like just spending it, I reinvested all of it to buy this place and to buy this equipment, and then I opened my own recording studio. Yeah.
And here we are.
And here we are.
How many years later is that? When were you in that studio when the guy quit and you got that job?
It was like 2016.
16, okay. So it's about
4 years ago.
3.5, 4 years. And here we are. So when did Studio Big Blue officially open? And what was the journey to getting it to open?
So what happened is that I was still working in that studio. And then I heard about this thing in Quebec that if you want to open a business in a region, like not in Montreal, you can ask for a very low interest loan from the kind of the Society of Commercial Development of each region.
Interesting.
So I was like, and then it was like at that time my mom fell very sick, and they were living in this area, and I was like, I don't know, it kind of like started working in my mind, and then I was like, you know what, like I have nothing to lose, so I wrote a business plan, like 25-page like business plan, and I just approached those guys and was like, I want to start a recording studio, and my approach was like, I want to specialize in two things. I want to specialize in electronic music, but that can imply hip hop too, and like everything that's electro pop too, like everything that's more like electronic. And I want to specialize in like movie scoring, and that I convinced them that would bring a lot of people from outside of Quebec and a lot of business even from the States, and it's just money in the region and blah blah blah, And then they just trusted me. So they lent in, like I invested a lot of my money, and then they gave me a loan as well.
And it's true. I mean, we're here from Ottawa. And
exactly.
we wouldn't be here otherwise. So
exactly.
It's the truth.
So I wasn't
from outside the region. You know, you're right on it, right on the money.
Exactly.
That's awesome. And I mean, it's very interesting because you said that your journey, you know, started in French pop.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting segment of the music industry,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, working with you in the last few hours and last night and this morning, you're just super versatile and you're able to work with anything.
Yeah.
And you're actually like electronic music genius. You're probably a full musical genius in general, but what you were able to create was really fascinating. So, I mean, how does that, for a producer, how does that shift happen when you're working with different styles? Like, do you have to change your approach in terms of musical arrangements and structure and stuff like that to fit that genre, or is it just second nature and whatever comes you just have?
The way I see it is that my work is to guide people in the unknown. So imagine like we're all in a village and we're safe behind the walls, and then we need to go explore the unknown outside of the village, and we don't know what's there.
Okay.
And then somebody's got to be there to be like, okay, I'll take you. You know, I'm used to the unknown. I don't know what's gonna happen,
Okay.
but I have a lot of experience in it. So I'm there to take you. Don't worry, it's gonna be okay. You know, and it's kind of like that because every time a new artist comes, we start the day. We have no idea what is gonna happen, and that like for people, anybody like going in the unknown can bring a lot of like insecurity, you know, fear,
hesitation,
stress, a lot of emotional like responses, right? So if like you need someone who's like who's super calm and super confident, and to get you in that zone of like, okay, it's gonna be fine, we'll see, you know, like just chill and like the magic will happen. But you gotta kind of get in that zone, and if everybody's just like, oh my god, we never get to that zone. So I feel like my job is even more of a like almost
facilitator.
Almost in the realm of psychology than in the realm of like music. You know what I mean? In that
Deep breathing.
Yeah. Keep breathing. It's gonna be okay. And then we just do the work. And then in terms of like, well, like I said, my musical background is like I know a lot about music, so I can adapt to any style.
Sweet.
So every time somebody comes and their vibe plus my vibe makes something different, always different. And
of course,
that's what I love about the job, is that it's never the same, right?
For sure, and we definitely felt the comfort in working with you. We just felt like we could be ourselves and just create, and then you're gonna bring it all together into something that's coherent.
Exactly.
You know, like there's chaos and creativity, and then you need a professional to then be able to like put it all and have it make sense. So tell us some of your highlights from so far. First of all, when did the studio officially open?
Opened 3 years ago.
3 years ago, nice.
And then I was still part-time. I kept a part-time job in Montreal for a bit, just while it was growing. So I've been here like producing full-time for almost a year now.
Nice. And tell us about some of the highlights of being here. You know, the different types of artists and you know, kinds of music, or people coming, like full bands coming in. Like, are you know, have you been able to accommodate different setups and stuff?
I do it all. Last year I've had like country band coming, and then I produced like some hip hop for LA. So I'd say that, you know, we go in all the directions. It doesn't matter. Like, I think my highlights from last year were we released a really good EP by a rapper called Shook, and I did all the beats. I'm really proud of it. And then and also I was working towards the end of the year, where I was working with a team from LA to pitch songs to big artists like Cardi B and Doja Cat and all that. So I've been producing for that kind of like American pop hip hop world. So that's fun. And then of course I started my electronic music project, Blue. which is like going super well as well. I haven't released anything yet, and like DJs like in Montreal and Toronto and Tulum already play my track, so
Wow.
that
You're just
that
sitting on
says
the magic.
like that says like something is like gonna happen with that. I don't know what.
That's exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Very good.
And so, is there a place, if people are just curious to see the full portfolio, is there a place on your website or like somewhere where people can, see the list of artists or?
Yeah, if they visit Studio Big Blue, uh, is it studiobigBlueQC.com or
We'll have it all the
studiobigblue.com?
links on
Yeah, perfect.
on the associated.
So on the website, on the Instagram, you can see like on the day-to-day basis what's happening here. We always post about the different things, but we have literally every day something new happening here, so it's really really captivating.
Nice. And I guess you have a few personal musical projects at the same time.
Yes.
So you're making electronic music.
Yeah, I'm working on my French project as well. So I finished 2 EPs that are gonna be released this year, and then I'm working on another album. So there's gonna be a lot of things coming up for that, for Sam Harvey. And then the Blue electronic music project is gonna be 2 EPs as well this year, and hopefully festivals next summer. I've been inviting to play in Tulum. I've been
Nice.
inviting to produce in Berlin,
Wow.
and then I'm planning to go in Mali and Uganda as well to record and produce there. So like there's gonna be a lot of very interesting beats coming out in 2020.
Sweet. One of the last questions, I'm just curious, you just mentioned you've already done a couple EPs and there's more in the works. How, because I know artists struggle with like getting the music out. Like what is your methodology? Do you have a release schedule plan? Are you looking, focused on labels? Are you looking to do some independent releases?
Yeah. Well, with my French project, I've been involved with labels and all this big industry where there's a lot of people eating off the artist's back, and I don't want to name names, but just in general, there's a lot of, it's like artists are like the ponies and everybody just wants their piece of them, right? And when you start, you don't know anything about the industry. So like for me, like I got a big record deal and they offered me like thousands of dollars to make albums, and I was like, oh my god, I made it, But now that I've been through that, I'm more, but I know a lot about the industry. So, but again, like if you educate yourself a little bit about the industry, how it works, you don't need any more. With internet, you don't need to be on a label.
There's resources for every.
I like the electronic music world because the contracts are not, you're not stuck in them. Like a label will just release a track for you, and then another can release an EP, but it's very free, and that is a cool model. And because the electronic music world is not necessarily like radio play and like thousands of dollars of revenues, it's like keeping it real, and I really like that about it. But if you play pop or rock or like something that has a popular, or how to say, like a commercial aspect to it, you can do everything yourself. Just hire the right people. You
gotta have a
to
lawyer who's gonna tell you what's in the contract and make sure you're protected.
Yeah, but even you don't really need a label anymore. You can just have like a really good team, like one person who does your social media campaign for the release, just have somebody to do a plan for you like that, and then like have somebody to do your radio tracking, and then have somebody, like do the management aspect of it, and then keep 100% of your masters, because that's what the labels are after. They want to
take your royalties.
They want to take your royalties. They want to take your masters, and that's what pays the most. Like if you get radio play, and if you get like Stingray and like all
Sync
these
and stuff like
internet
that.
radios, that's a lot of revenues that are not going in the artist's pockets. And really, the labels, they sign you and then they don't do shit for you after. So
we've heard stories.
yeah. So I mean, there's good ones out there, but
Yeah.
there's bad ones too. So choose carefully and don't. What I'm saying is like, don't just be like, oh, I got one offer, yeah, I'm
Take
gonna
it,
go for it. More
don't
like
just
check
look it up.
what they're doing, like if they're gonna actually work for you, or just put you on a shelf and
Move
not
on,
do
yeah.
anything. It's
Sam,
important.
thanks again, man. Like, this was super epic for us, and we're excited for the world to hear what you helped us create.
Yeah.
And we're excited to hear about all your other projects, and I'm sure a lot of our community is going to be interested in your services. So if somebody was interested in just knowing about your rates or getting in touch with you, I mean, we'll include email, but anything you want to mention?
No, just contact me and we'll see
It's a
what's
case by case basis.
case by case. Yeah, what's your needs, and yeah, we can do anything, and we accommodate like pretty much every style of music and every schedule. We just gotta talk together and see what works.
Thanks again, Sam. You a boss.
All right, thank you, man.
Cheers.